Hello, everyone. Taking a moment to silence all my notifications. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm wrapping up my 4 lives this week. And this one is specifically for you to understand sort of the difference we're moving through right now in our life. Let me go ahead and grab this really quickly. I'm just checking the title because this is really, for me, it's about understanding why life looks different after 40 and putting together the entire picture of the soul arc and how it applies to you and how you can use it. And so I wanted to be able to walk you through that. Each of my videos have spoken to this in little pieces and parts, but where we're at now is something that's a little bit more collected so that we can see it from a bigger picture. That's my intention at this point in time. And I'm feeling today like it is a Friday. I don't know if it's the moon that's hit or what, but I feel like I've been running a marathon, and maybe I have because I have been mentally preparing and working through the content for my different videos this week and really thinking about this. And so, Catherine, I see you here. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to drop messages in the chat or questions if you have based on what I'm walking through. And so I've kind of been walking through this from the place of understanding midlife in a different way, to recognizing that when you do see midlife in a different way, there's a couple of things that you can look to that guide you on your journey, to recognizing there's just 2 points you want to take a look at and introduce one other element. And I'm looking at this from a couple of different vantage points. One of them is astrology. So you don't have to understand astrology, but I look to it to give me some guidance because it personalizes everything for us. We can look at it from the general standpoint, but then also look at it specifically to our own charts. I look at everything through human design as well, and I like to look at human design as a really foundational piece to understand, regardless if you don't know anything else, follow your strategy and your authority. And so those are some of the foundational pieces. And then I bring my experience in business. Basically, for as long as since 97, I've been doing my own businesses, marketing, and all of everything from marketing, spiritual development, business growth, strategy, and working with women to help them grow their business online for years. So that's kind of been my journey, and I bring all of that to the table. And then I've also been developing myself in my own spiritual journey and my own intuitive gifts. And as I do my work, my intuition has been opening up. And it has always been a part of my work, even before I knew how to name it. Now it's just integrated in. I did this back when I did marketing and I had no language for it then. And now I know why I was really good at marketing, because I was very intuitive. So what we're going to do today is really answer your question today about really knowing exactly where you are on your personal timeline. And so we're going to walk you through it so you can see it in full picture. And in large part, I'm going to use myself as an example. And if somebody else wants to hop in with, can you do me? I can do some of you without pulling your whole chart. So the recap of teaching all of this is to help you see that everything that we live through in our 40s, and I've already done this path, that's why I have the wisdom to teach this, is everything we live through in our 40s and in through our early to mid 50s is extremely developmental, and it is soul guided and it is soul intended. And your soul set this up at the beginning when you were born. That's why you have the chart that you have. And it helps reframe everything that goes on at that time out of the traditional conventional stereotype of what midlife is, which is a crisis, all of the senses of self-doubt, all of the, did I make a good choice? Why am I here? What have I done wrong? Feeling like you've given yourself away in your life, which I did, like I look at my things and how I feel like, well, I gave all of my life away and I'm finally getting to live my own life, and feeling like you're wrestling with your family and the world to be able to just be yourself. There's so many components to midlife that seem to go on forever. is how it felt for me. It didn't feel like things started to clear up until probably 52, 54, like that range. Things started to sort of I could see like, all right, I'm finally coming out of it. And I really wish I had known some of these things beforehand. I was clueless. I don't know what rock I was living under. I did not have a lot of people who had experienced perimenopause. I did know about it, but I just didn't have women to share experiences with. I didn't have a lot of women who understood business and being intuitive, which seemed like back when I started doing this, they weren't two things that sat in the room together. Nowadays, more people do put those two things in the room together. And there was just so many things that I wrestled through. And I have a habit of looking at things retrospectively and as I live them to see how can I see this in a more positive light, and then how can I share that forward to the women that I work with so that they don't have this experience when they hit this age. So I'm going to go ahead and take just a quick minute to talk a little bit about the soul arc. The end result of doing this across my life is designing what I call the soul arc. And it uses astrology to inform the developmental growth that we experience across time. And I'm choosing to pick the window of time from 40 to just about 60, because I believe that this is the time frame that our soul says, alrighty, we're going to shift the game significantly. And what we're going to do is we're going to stop doing things the way we did them to get you here. And now we need to do them this way. And your soul guides you. And each of the phases of time that we move through, early 40s, mid 40s, late 40s and 50, heading into your early 50s to your mid to late 50s, these are developmental times. They have a very definite purpose for us in terms of our spiritual growth, in terms of our personal growth, in terms of how it affects our physical life. And so the soul arc defines this. And I don't need you to understand astrology, but it is what I use to design the developmental stages because they speak to the spiritual growth that we often do. So if you're intuitive and you're spiritual and you have a business, you know that those things go together, and you're using your spirit guided intuitive senses to inform your business choices and the direction of your life. Then it would make sense to take a look at the developmental stages of your soul and spirit in this lifetime and how you can use it to live your life a little bit better, or a little more peaceful, or a little more self-worthy, a little more confident. And ultimately, my sense is that when you follow this, when you can begin to develop the skills that your soul wants you to develop at this time, you have the authority, the sovereignty, the agency, the self-worth and power that you need and want as you're moving through life. So a lot of times these things come into question during your 40s and 50s. How have I given myself away? How have I given my agency away? How am I not living in my authority? Where have I been sourcing my power from? Why am I giving it away? Like, a lot of those questions come up. But when you know developmentally this is a season to question that so that you can get extra clear, you stop with a lot of the internal messaging that takes you down, because we all do that really well, right? A lot of people do at any rate. So let me go ahead and pull up a quick chart. I'm going to share a screen. I want to share a window of sort of the developmental process we kind of go through. And I've shared this in a previous video. But in this instance, I want you to go ahead and take a look at, I'm looking for it. I can see that you're seeing it. This is the developmental arc. And these are my working documents. I haven't made them pretty yet. This is all my new run. This is the developmental arc. And for me, what we're looking at is a growth time that exists from our first Saturn return all the way to our second Saturn return at the end of our 50s. And throughout every single age, we actually go through very definite and determined growth. And I'm choosing to choose 40 as the jumping off point, and I call it our awakening season, because there are several aspects that happen to us collectively. Now, the exact dates are always going to change a little bit, but there's something that happens to us at this time where we're really being asked to dissolve what we created. So if we look at this from a framework and we look at the beginning happening from your second Saturn return, where you're declaring, this is what I want my life to hold for the next going forwards, and you look at this season, your 30s are about growth. It's all about setting yourself up, building experiences, building credibility, um, building confidence in who you are, clarifying what you want and going after it, learning how to use your power in the world, learning how to use yourself and your will in the world. That's all of what we do until we hit our 40s. In our 40s, gears change, woohoo! And now it becomes a spiritual message. When you bring Neptune in the picture, the question is, hello, let's go ahead and take a look at this from a spiritual place. Let's dissolve all of the things that felt really solid and see what's left over. How do you see your life through a spiritual lens? And then you get Uranus that comes in here that shakes things up and wants things to be different. And then you get Saturn that comes in, and Saturn essentially says, hey, listen, let's take a look at what you built at the first Saturn return, and let's see whether or not you built it true to yourself, or were you building it true to expectations and norms of the collective? And so you have this really stacked area where everything comes into question. And again, a lot of these ages can shift specific to you. When you know that that's what's going on in your early 40s, you can deal with the questions and challenges that come up as it relates to your business and your life and your relationships in a completely different way. That you don't feel as lost because you know that there is a purpose to this, and you can explore those questions with less doubt. And then we hit a couple of seasons in our mid 40s that are about taking a look at what you've outgrown. And then you begin to figure out how this is the thing I've really outgrown, and I'm really growing in this direction. You're not fundamentally changing. You're looking at the contents of your life, and you're looking at why it is you have outgrown them. What is the quality of that thing that no longer fills you? And how do you, I know the common words are up level or scale it up, but it's how do you transform that to a foundation for the next thing that you're growing into? That becomes really important in your 45 to 47, 49 age range, because you already have a depth of experience. And the question at that point is, how do you take the wealth of experience and depth of competence that you have and use it going forward? And this is where things get a little different. What happens is that this season, we begin to shift our focus from the thing that got us here to the thing we have to develop going forward. And this is where midlife gets hard. When you do not know that you need to change the thing that you've been using to grow with, and you have to pick something completely different to grow with, that's where things get hard and get stuck. I actually like the way I'm saying this. I know it may not be clear to everyone, but I'm going to use a little astrology language for everyone. Basically, all the way up until 40s, you're really developing your South Node. And it's a point in your chart, and it's definable, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. But when you hit your 40s and you begin to live through your 40s, what you need to begin to do is live from your North Node. And your North Node is going to be completely at the opposite axis pole of your South Node. And so that's what makes it challenging feeling, because you're having to use a skill set that you've been trying to compensate around not doing. You've been doing this over here. Now you need to do this. Excuse me, I feel like I have to sneeze. Woof, that's a first on camera. Anyhow, so this is important to note because you're having to use a totally different skill set. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up so you can see this, because I think that's important. So let me come back over here and stop share and come back with a different screen that I want to share with you so you can see these. All right, we're going to share the nodes. And so one of the things that I want to share with you about the nodes is that when we take a look at the nodes, this is our growth trajectory. This is what we're here to grow from our 40s all the way through to the end of our 50s and beyond. The idea is that your South Node, these are the strengths you have. You build them with skill up until your 40s. You can keep building them, but they're not going to be the things that grow you. They will be unfulfilling over time, and they will keep you trapped. So we're looking at North Node. Now, for instance, mine is North Node. I have a North Node in Aries, And so I have done a lot of work in the South Node department. And when I was dealing with the challenges in my 40s, I was trying to lean into my South Node strengths to help me through them. That is not how it's designed. You will find your way through the challenges when you lean into your North Node. You can rest a little bit on your South Node because you have the experience and the competence there, but you're going to be asked to use your North Node to find your way. And it is often uncomfortable because it's the opposite of what you've been doing. So for me, South Node was collaboration, working in community, accommodating, finding happiness for everyone. North Node, I am supposed to take my own action, not wait for other people, trust my instincts, and just lead and use my voice for where it's sitting in my chart. Those felt so diametrically opposed that I thought I would break everything. So I spent a lot more time in my South Node qualities and did not develop my North Node qualities. So they weren't developed enough to help me through hard times in the ways they could have been. So I hope this is making sense to you all, because we're really being asked to use a completely different quality and skill that is contrary to what we have been using to get to this point. And this becomes even more pronounced. Let me stop sharing. This becomes even more pronounced when you hit 49, 50, 51, 52. At that age point, if you have not been exercising your development of your North Node, you have something else stack on top of this, which is you have to face your core wound. And so there will be a constellation of things that happen for you that will force you to deal with your wound, force you to look for other options available to you that you can access for a solution. And that will be forcing you to look at your North Node, not just look at what you've used in the past, so that you can grow through that period. And what I really like about looking at the developmental seasons over time is that if you know this is coming, you can develop the skills so that when you hit this time, you're well-resourced, you understand what's going on, you've done the work, and you can slide right through this without a whole lot of challenges in your life. I've watched this now happen with several people. It is really lovely to watch them hit their Chiron return and feel like they've just got to get clear on a couple little things, but they don't have to dismantle their life or go through serious crisis. For those of us who don't have this awareness, or maybe because we have extra aspects in our chart like I did, that time was exceptionally hard. And I don't want that to be hard for the women I work with, which is why I have this process that we work through. So what I want to do is walk you through a little bit of this process so that you understand. I've set up a Soul Arc Intensive, and the Soul Arc Intensive is designed to not just teach you how to ride a bike, but walk with you as you learn to ride the bike. And it doesn't take very long, because when you walk in the door with me, I already know you have all of the skills. You have all of the experience you've brought with you from your businesses before, or work before, or relationships before, or therapy, or whatever you've done. I know you're coming through the door with having self-awareness at a spectacular level. You don't get to your 40s and be spiritual and have a business and not have done some sort of really deep work. So you walk through the door having done your work. You also walk through the door with a knowledge of yourself, and I trust that knowledge and expertise that you bring. And it's really easy for me to see it when you show up. What we do is I run a report for you that's very, very specific to you, that identifies your North Node, your South Node, your Chiron, and the rest of your chart, and how they all interact together, and then say, here you go. Based on your life experience and what you shared with me about what's going on and what you want to grow and what you want to have be clearer, here's how to see it, and here's how to see it from how you would do it from a South Node perspective, and here's how it would look if you do it from a North Node perspective. And then we dive in specifically to your life and what your challenge is. So for some people, they're in the process of selling or trying to decide if they're to sell or close their business. For some people, they're in the position of trying to figure out, I've been working on this for years and decades, and why can't I get this to pick up traction in the marketplace? I have the skills, I have the credentials, why isn't this working? And that's where the second piece comes into play. The second piece that you get is a marketing design read, which is not a marketing plan, but it is a very clear articulation of how you're designed to communicate into the world, especially from a marketing perspective. It's not how, it's not the tactical, strategic, do I go onto Instagram kind of business. It is quite literally which avenue and what form of communication are you designed to navigate with, and how do you receive others and how do they receive you. So that's the second component of what happens in an intensive with me. We have 4 meetings, so you'll receive the reports. I can walk through them with you, but mostly what I do is I pull the core pieces out, and then we literally use those pieces in specific examples of what's going on. So you bring your situation to the table like you would in a coaching or mentoring or strategy conversation with the mentor. We sit down, we take a look at them, and then you get an interpretation and a practice from me that brings all of what the report says, but also brings my experience and intuition to the table. And when that comes in, you get a full picture of growth. So you may walk out with strategic suggestions. You may walk out with personal growth suggestions. It depends on where you're at in your journey. So we'll have 4 meetings over 6 weeks. And the point of those is to have you recognize what your North Node is and put it into practice. And you'd be surprised how crafty we can be about keeping ourselves thinking we're doing North Node, but it's a convoluted way of living our South Node. And the reason we do this, and it makes total sense, is that we have justified in a very smart, logical, efficient way that when we do it this way, things work. But that is often your South Node reperpetuating itself, which is why we do an intensive, so that you can have a lived experience over a 6-week period of time of what it is like, what it feels like, how you can notice yourself thinking differently, thinking into South Node thinking instead of North Node thinking. This happens to all of us. And then it helps to look at how to see the world through the North Node and see the possibilities in that, because they're so inherently different than what we've been doing with our South Node. So another way to think of it is, these are the soul skills and gifts that you came into this life with, and you've been using them. And now you need to develop this particular soul gift and soul path. And how do I lean into this when I naturally want to, as a human, default into what we've done before? Because that's our nervous system speaking, that's our safety mechanism speaking, that's our experience speaking. That's what we do. And I don't often find that it takes more than a 6-week period to kind of get the gist of it, with potentially follow-ups if we'd like, but it's pretty straightforward. That's what I want to work on with you. If you're interested, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. But this is one of the most powerful ways to activate your growth, your soul growth for your midlife, and orient yourself to what you need to be doing. It is extremely calming. It really sets up your nervous system to know where you're heading, and it helps you make much better decisions for yourself in your life, with your family, with your own personal self, with the growth you want to do, with your business, in whatever capacity. You have a different orientation to it. And that orientation, when you have it, changes all the components. So I do want to name that if you don't want to do a 6-week intensive, you can get the Soul Arc report and a single session as a really basic entry level. That's $300. The intensive is $1,200. If you do the report and decide you want to do the intensive within the first 30 days, I will apply the report to the cost of the intensive. And so it's basically a credit. And then so it'll be $900 instead of $1,200. So if you have any questions, let me know. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you. And I'm learning as I do this, how to break this into smaller bite-sized pieces for everyone. And I appreciate you sticking with me through all of this. I've enjoyed interacting with everyone. I've really appreciated everyone who's come along, asked their questions and comments, and I will see you on Sunday, because that's my next message to come out. Take care, y'all. We'll see you.